I'd go about anywhere my friend Joanne asked me to, and have come to think of it. But I'd have come here no matter who asked me. We are so excited to have you as individuals and in this particular assembly in our state. We're proud you came here. As far as we're concerned, you ought to make this your permanent convention home. And, I will simply leave you on that score with the request that I make of many such groups, which is, while you're here with us, tip big. We can use a scratch and show what generous Americans you are. Welcome to, Joanne said it well, welcome to a friendly state, but more importantly, a pro-agriculture state, pro-business state, pro-growth state. And that's the main reason that I would have tried to get myself invited if a friend like Joanne hadn't made it possible. There's so much that we want to say by way of appreciation for you and all those with whom you work as you make your livelihoods. It's dear to the heart and dear to the economic heart of Indiana, and if they'd stop to think about it, most of the rest of America too. So we're pleased to have you. I was just treated to a typically a healthy farm breakfast in the room next door, my subcommittee of this group. That's another good thing about agriculture. It's good for you. People in agriculture tend to be hale and hearty. I was traveling down in southwestern Indiana a few years ago, just one of many such memories. We stopped for gas. There's a couple of fellas shooting the breeze there out in the summer evening, and one guy, a great big guy, in bib overalls, but obviously along in years, and I introduced myself. Said his name was Jim Yeagley. I said, are you in agriculture? Yes, all my life. I said, oh really, how much land you got? And it was, 800 acres, something like that. I said, well gee, that's a lot of work. I said, is it a family thing? Yeah. He said, I said, oh, would like you have your son maybe? Got sons helping you? He said, yeah, my son did, but he ain't much use anymore. He got too old. My grandson helps me now. So. Some of you will remember one of our proud products here, Earl Butts, Secretary of Agriculture, a long, long time ago, and a brilliant agribusiness mind, but also just funnier than the devil. And Secretary Butts used to like to tell about the premier farmer of the county reached 65, and they sent the young cub reporter out to interview him, ask him how he did it. And the kid said, well, sir, he said, congratulations on a great career. And still working hard at 65. And the guy said, I intend to keep on going. He said, really? He said, you must have good genes. He said, what'd your father die of? And the guy said, who said he's dead? He's 85. He works as hard as I do. He's on the spread next to mine. He said, that is amazing. The kid's scribbling away. He said, okay, well, back to the genetic thing. What about your grandfather? What did he die of? He said, who said he's dead? He's 105, feeling great. He's getting married next week. The kid said, married? At 105, what do you want to go get married for? And the guy said, who said he wanted to? I've learned an awful lot. I'd never run for any public office before this one, and so I was a little bit green, but I've learned a million things. One of them was, I learned, to my surprise, that it isn't necessarily automatic, as it seemed to be to us, if you're from a state like ours, to be enthusiastic about agriculture and in all its aspects. To me, that was just a reflex action, of course. It's a very important part of our state, always has been. I learned that this is not the case everywhere, including a lot of states with equally proud ag heritages and But I guess things have changed and some attitudes have changed, but it's very hard to understand. You know, for me, when we wrote an economic strategy for Indiana, not that we ever think we can outguess the market, but just we wanted to think through what our long suits might be and where we would put our emphasis, at least as we pursued new investment and so forth. I said, agriculture will be a chapter in that document. We won't have a separate ag strategy over here on the side as sort of a hobby. It is integrally part of what we want to do to build a greater state. And we've treated it that way ever since. Our Department of Agriculture understands when Joe Kelsey, its current leader, comes to see me, he knows I want to hear not what did you do to control, supervise, and regulate agriculture. He wants to, I'm going to want to know, Joe, what did you do to promote agriculture since the last time you came through here? You know, we, across the board in our administration, we measure everything. It's a good principle in life, but in business we used to say, if you're not keeping score, you're just practicing. It's really important in government because government's a monopoly and it's unaccountable if left to itself. In business, right, in your business, the world keeps score for you. If you don't do it, somebody's measuring your sales, your market share, your stock price if you have one. Not in government, it can just drift along, so we measure everything. And our environmental people know that we are measuring and watching to see, for instance, how long does it take to issue a livestock permit? Now, before we got there, we had to do a little digging in many areas like this one because nobody was counting. But it turned out it was about 116 days. It's 35 now. 30 is the statutory, they tell me, is the statutory minimum. So we're aiming at, let's say, 31. But it is just a part of an attitude, an outlook we have that says, you know, those of us with public responsibilities are here to facilitate and encourage, take down barriers, and where we can, enable the private sector, the one that counts, the one that pays the bills, the one where most people do and should live their lives, to help that sector to flourish. And so whether it's agriculture or any other dimension of our responsibilities, that's our starting point. And I'm puzzled. I'm sure people here have a much better take as to why national policy, as regards agriculture, doesn't come to the same conclusion. You know, I've never farmed. I've been on 1 million of them now. And so I don't pretend to know much. I know this. It's hard to grow something without creating some dust. You know, it's just, dust is going to happen. And I don't know that anybody's ever calculated the dust death rate, but I don't think it's very high. I can remember coming in dirty a few times when I was a kid, and my mom almost killed me, but that's a different thing. I would not have been saved by a regulation. You know, we have been especially glad in Indiana for our ag sector, those who farm and those who are part of the chain of life, literally, that flows from the farm, in this lousy economy. I mean, it's very clear to me, we don't claim to have had much to do with this, but you know, 05 wasn't a very good year. Since the year we came in, we've watched farm income double. And that's been tremendously valuable at a time when income from other sources in our economy has withered away, as it has. When we came to office, it might have been this hotel, I can't remember, but in some hotel, we assembled in a room smaller than this, the first 100 or so people who'd agreed to come and be part of our administration. And I said to them, look, everybody was new to government, by the way. Our team had been out of authority for a long, long time. And that was good, as it worked out. I said, not that we were out, it was good that the people were new. I said every great business or enterprise I ever saw had a very clear objective, and everybody in it knew what that was. And then they tried to align their activities to that purpose. And that's what we're going to do. And our purpose, or mission, or strategic objective, or whatever your favorite buzzword is that our purpose is to raise the net income of Hoosiers. We're going to, no matter where you're working, no matter what your assignment is, we're going to ask together, you and I, what can you do, or do better, or do faster, or maybe it's stop doing, to make it more likely the next investment, the next job happens here, not somewhere else. And then we're going to try to run the people's business here so as to leave as many of their hard-earned dollars as we possibly can in their pockets. And if we get that right, all our other problems will start to solve themselves or become more manageable. And we've been working on that ever since. And that takes us, you know, to our ag policy and to parallel approaches to everything else we do. That is always the goal. And businesses, the representatives of businesses or industries like yours will, you know, come through on a regular basis, express a view on something, tell me about some problem they're having. Almost invariably, when they are done with their agenda, before they leave, they'll say something very gracious like, you know, is there something we can do what can we do to help Indiana? I always say the same thing. I said, oh yes there is. Make money. We want you to make money. If you will just go do what you do very, very well and make some money, then sooner or later you'll hire somebody else and you'll provide them with opportunity and a little greater hope in life. And we'll be a little bit stronger state because we'll have another person productively occupied and helping pull a wagon when we have to collect taxes from each other and so forth. Now, I'm always very careful not to prescribe to any other state, let alone to the nation, based on our experience here. Obviously circumstances are different, well aware of that, but I will say, just watching the course of recent events, I sure wish that national policy looked a little more like the one we've tried to implement here, because we've got, I don't like to practice alarmism, and I was raised in the Reagan school of optimism, and I'm still bullish on the long-term prospects of America, but I'm telling you, we've got very, very serious difficulties ahead. When we have to handle them, they will not handle themselves, and there's no way to do that without a very aggressively pro-growth outlook. That is not a philosophical or political statement. That's a mathematical statement. I don't imagine there's anybody who needs less instruction in the perils of debt than people in your business or people in agriculture. Farmers live with debt all their lives. They know the importance of managing it well. And as a people, as individuals, and as certain large institutions, and as a government, on all those dimensions, Americans have not managed debt very well over recent decades. And now all of us have some, I guess, responsibility for that. In the question and answer period that we're going to get to in just a few minutes, maybe somebody will tell me to relax and be more reassured about the state of our national economy and the world economy. I hope somebody, I'd love to leave here a little less worried than I come in. But I will say that I'm still very, very concerned about, just based on any objective data I see. Last Friday they had their monthly unemployment report. It was lousy. It was not only lousy in the aggregate, but friends of mine who drilled down a couple levels into it discovered things like there was really zero growth in permanent employment. The only growth that was shown was in temporary work. There was zero growth in adult employment. There was some, over the last few months, there was some improvement in a terrible rate for teenagers. And there was, last month, health and education, nonprofit sectors grew a little bit. Employment in the for-profit world, the one again that has to pay the bills ultimately, slipped. So we don't yet see much of a recovery that I can find, let alone the kind of rousing recovery we need. There's clouds all over, as far as I can tell. There's a lot of people more knowledgeable about world finance in this room than I am, but you know, I keep an eye on these things. We all learned about credit default swaps in the last few years. Okay, this credit default rate on Spain is getting close to 400. A friend of mine says that at 450 it triggers all these automatic sell-off clauses and covenants and so forth. And school will be out for Spain. So, you know, we all, when you didn't have to be, you know, an expert, a genius to know that the Europeans had only pushed off their problem with Greece and now Ireland, and there's more coming. When I say something like that, it always reminds me on Monday Night Football. Football's a sore topic around here this morning, so. On Monday Night Football, years and years ago, they were talking about Bill Walsh, the 49ers coach, you know, legendary. And somebody said, he's a genius, man's a genius. Joe Theismann breaks in and says, now wait a minute. He says, this is football. There's no geniuses in football. A genius is someone like Norman Einstein. Well, you don't have to be a genius to know that the debt problems in the world are not solved. I see issues around commercial real estate still in this country, and the biggest one of all, the biggest debtor of all, is Uncle Sam. And I think all you need to know to see things as I do about that is that in the budget that the current administration has promulgated, it says that budget leads to an unacceptable outcome. At least many of us think it leads to debt levels, you know, getting close to the size of the entire economy. And people have written whole books that say you get to 90% or something like that of GDP, and you've gone over the falls. You won't get back. The debt burden will just be too much. And anyways, that budget says we're headed there. But just to do that, just to reach disaster, it assumes a growth rate of 3.4% average over the next 10 years. Now, America has not achieved that average since the 1950s. So we're going to have a heck of a boom. And more. What that tells me is that we need an all-out, unapologetic, full-throated set of national policies that tries to align everything that's within our control at the objective of more growth. I think you should be for that whether you're a limited government type like me or somebody who believes the government should do all the new things that this administration thinks and others, and some sincerely do. If you think that, then you've got the biggest stake of anybody in an economy that grows like hell. And so let's hope that we can spread a little awareness of this, and maybe come together as Americans. This can be a great unifying objective if people will accept it. But it means that some other things are going to have to temporarily take second place. And you're not going to be able to regulate the heck out of dust. And you're not going to have to be able to indulge fantasies about you know, like huge new costs for energy in the pursuit of what your own computer tells you will not be movement in the world thermometer. You're going to have to be interested in a form of taxation that encourages investment and growth in income. We had a little session before we came in here. Somebody asked about this, and I said, I'm with the great business and Secretary of the Treasury, a businessman, Bill Simon, who once said, it would be nice if America had a tax system that looked like someone designed it on purpose. We ought to design it on purpose, and the purpose ought to be growth in the private economy. We can argue later on about how to divide it up and what to spend it on. We're going to have to be able to manage our debts and get to a point where that's even a relevant topic again. So, I tell you that we are enormously proud to have a part of your industry in our state. I'm very grateful as a citizen of this country that we are the agricultural capital of the world. It is one of those things, if it's helping sustain Indiana in bad times, it is doing it for the U.S. too, whether our friends in Washington see it or not. And your part in it is so indispensable. And you're a great example of a continuing and enduring strength of this country. That our economy has less friction, fewer transaction costs, and spills less along the way to delivering value, whatever form, from whoever produced it to whoever consumed it in any place on earth. And we salute you for it, and we say welcome to our state, and you guys come back as often as you like. Thanks, and I'd like to have some questions.
If I may, 1 second, we do have mics that are set out, standing mics as well as roving mics that will be coming, as well as we'll be picking up the questions. The first question, Governor, is what do you think of the President's Debt Commission's proposal to reduce the budget deficit, including the tax policy recommendations?
I like it a lot. I mean, I like the fact that I like it in terms of its entirety. I like the fact that it was done, and that the people who were part of it had the gumption to recommend things they knew would be controversial. There's a lot of things in there I disagree with, which is good. If I agreed 100%, or anybody did, then that product wouldn't make much of a contribution because it would have zero chance of enactment. So I like, the first thing to say is I like the effect that it would have on our deficit and on our debt. You know, what don't I like? Well, I don't think it takes the right approach to health care, which is a huge part of the out-year debt problem. And I'd like to have seen it be more aggressive about that. With regard to taxation, I very much like the direction. I might even go further, but the idea of coming down to a few low and flat rates and virtually no special preferences is the right answer in my judgment. If you want a lot of growth, will it change lives for people? Sure, but you know, something got to change, and I understand about fear of the unknown, but I'm afraid of the known right now. What I know is we're going over Niagara on the current track. It comes home so often, you know. People say, well, you know, if you cut this or cut that, it'd be a lot of pain. And I'd tell you, first of all, from our experience, I can say this with some confidence. You'd be surprised how much government you'd never miss. Believe me. And secondly, about pain, you know, maybe so here and there, but you want to see real pain, just stay on the current course. I see a hand way back.
Governor, those of us in agriculture are very concerned about exports. You speak of growth. China has had 9% growth for the past 30 years. How can you set us on a road that helps us take more advantage of the growth elsewhere?
Yes, well, I'm just back from China and Japan. Been going to Asia every year, and I don't have to tell anybody in this room how dynamic that part of the world is. I mean, my first instinct when I see 9% growth rates and the like over there is great. This is good. First of all, it is lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and out of misery. And you know, where I go on Sunday, that's considered a great thing, wherever such people are. But of direct relevance in this room, those are hungry people. Now they got their hands on a few dollars, the first thing they want is something better to eat, maybe something with some protein in it. We know where they can get it. And so this room needs no seminars from me about the importance of keeping trade open and encouraging it. There'll be difficulties, and we'll have serious differences with countries like that as they emerge, but I think they're manageable, and I think they must be managed in the mutual interest. The national interest of the United States, I believe, is served by a wealthier, developing world, and that wants things we can produce for them, and it'll start with agriculture as far as I'm concerned. That's one of the more hopeful things out there. You got one here? So, if you were president, what would you do to manage our national debt? Well, this commission's headed in much the right direction. It has to start with the entitlement programs. That's where the money is. And, you know, both Social Security and Medicare, first of all, need to be bifurcated. We need to say to people presently receiving those benefits or anywhere close to receiving them, nothing changes. Deal's a deal. You're good to go. But as you know, those programs are not paid for and were not paid for by the people getting the money. They were paying for whoever was old at that time. And they had a better ratio going for them than what goes on now. We're down under 3 people for paying for each beneficiary, and it's headed closer to 2. And for those young people, I mean, this is the issue for young people in this country, is you do not deserve to be shafted by a system which cannot possibly be sustained. You're going to, let's have a new compact. Now, I could go for almost anything that makes the arithmetic work, almost anything. And so it's fun to me. Social Security, the old cliche is third rail of American politics, right? Touch it and die. And that was true, I guess, for a long time. Less true today. In fact, I'm so cheered up. Once in a while now, you'll see somebody write, when they're talking about this subject, they say, well, Social Security, that's the easy one. Well, that's progress. Relatively speaking, it is easy. I don't think there's anything hard about deciding it should be means tested. Why send Warren Buffett a pension check? There is no earthly reason, but we do. I don't think it's hard at all to conclude that the retirement age eventually ought to be higher. Our young people today, barring man-made disaster, you know, war or something of some kind, are going to live to an astonishing age. You all know this. The hogs some of you are raising will be harvesting you know, organs usable in humans before, while a lot of people in this room are still alive. On and on. So it's absolutely nuts to dismiss out of hand the idea that years out there, I mean, people are going to be healthier and they're going to want to stay productive. And you know, the way we index these benefits today means that they're worth more tomorrow than now, not the same. So there's a lot of ways to do that. And I would certainly start with very direct action on the entitlement programs. And then, you know, bariatric surgery on the federal government. You know, it is not only bad business, it is unacceptable. The average federal employee earns twice as much as the citizen who pays his salary. You know, all that's out of hand, got to come back in line. One thing I would do, here we have this authority, some other governors do, I would restore to the presidency, at least on a temporary, maybe an emergency basis, power to impound money. It's hard for legislatures to vote, even courageous ones, to vote for the kind of reductions that really be necessary, and they can't find them all anyway. So empower the executive to go in and withhold money, as you would anywhere else in life, right? To deal with other circumstances. Where else in life are you required legally to spend every penny that you budget? So those are some of the things. You can shout it out now.
Yeah. Just a statement about the Republican governors and the Congress and stuff like that, and states' rights.
Yeah.
Could you address that a little more? I mean, I look at Casey, Ohio, you, Jindal, and Barber.
Mm-hmm.
You guys kind of get some of the power back, please?
Okay, so the question is, what about some restoration of the rights of states? It's a very encouraging thing to me that this is being discussed much more often now. For a while, I thought I must be among the last handful of Americans remembered there was a 10th Amendment. It's very clear what it says. Powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states. Couldn't be any more clear. We've read it out. Somehow the courts have sort of read it into the outbox of American history. A lot of people are saying, oh, wait a minute, there was a reason for that, and it is the law. So I tend to be one of those people, and we can make the original argument for federalism is a freedom argument. That the states can be a protector of individual freedom against what our founders, they could never have imagined the federal government of today, in the worst nightmare. But they imagined the federal government might get out of its corral. So the original premise of federalism is the protection of liberty, and that's still as valid, if not more so than ever. But there's also just a practicality argument these days. Federal government can't get much of anything right. And here and there states do. We'd like to think we have on a variety of fronts. So yes, I think it's a very positive thing. I intend to speak for it, and others have. Rick Perry down in Texas wrote a book about it recently. I hope it gets a whole lot more currency. I'll give you one example. I don't know if this can be made to happen or not. But as long as it's on the books, and I hope that will not be much longer, the President's health care bill, which I could have cited earlier as an incredibly anti-growth measure that's been taken, just to make the difficulty of paying our debts harder. But that bill relies on the states. We're all supposed to set up these exchanges, whatever they think those are, to manage all these new subsidies and enroll all these new people. The federal government is terrified at the thought that any state, let alone a lot of states, say, go ahead, because the default mechanism is the feds have to do it. They have no way to do it. And so it's crossed my mind that maybe a whole lot of states, if we could get together and say, we're only doing this under the following terms, and they are much more pro-market than the ones that are in that bill. That'd be a way to assert some states' prerogatives and see what they say.
Governor, when the nation was first founded, the people that really regulated our lives were elected, judges, sheriffs, and so forth. Now it seems like legislatively and regulatory ways, the ones that are really controlling our lives and making the rules are appointed, and they're not responsive to the voters' needs. The EPA is a good example of that. What would your attitude be towards making more of those officials that affect our lives so severely to be elected positions so that we could alter or make it out of line, such as how the EPA?
Yeah, well, it's a very real issue for our democracy. I've suggested that EPA would better be named this year, these days, the Employment Prevention Agency, since that seems to be their main objective and certainly their main effect. Now you're raising a very profound question. And really, I don't want to go too philosophical on you here, but I really think it's as central a question as, it's right there along with how we're going to pay our debts, how we're going to pay our bills. It's right there along with who works for whom. Do we work for the government, or is the government there to, as some of us imagine, to support the rest of life? Below all, or maybe above all those questions, is this one. What kind of people do we intend to be? A self-governing people who believe it's our responsibility to look out for ourselves as far as possible? A people who are determined to make decisions for ourselves, or, as some people honestly believe, are we victims? Are we helpless naifs who need the benevolent protection of our betters? That's basically the way some folks think about it, and have for the last century. The so-called progressive movement. You know, I noticed today there are folks who feel that the traditional label for their politics doesn't work too well anymore, so now they want to be called progressives. Okay? But the progressive movement was all about that. Government by experts, government by the elites, who will have superior knowledge and intellect and command of the facts. Now, that's not the way the founders drew it up. From your question, I gather it's not the way you'd prefer. So I'd like to see much sharper limitations, of course, on the on executive branch agencies. I don't know I don't think you want to elect the head of the EPA, but you could certainly, Congress could reassert authority to pass or not on any significant rule that an operation like that put forward.